She was born a princess, but her life began with a death sentence. Declared a bastard after her mother was executed, Elizabeth Tudor was a child who should never have survived. This is the story of how a girl, cast aside and forgotten, outplayed the treacherous court of her own family, navigated a world of deadly political games, and through sheer force of will, became England's most powerful woman. Her journey wasn't just about survival. It was about mastering a game where the only prize for losing was the executioner's axe. To understand Elizabeth, you first have to understand her father, Henry VIII. He was a king haunted by a single, all-consuming obsession. He needed a son. For this, he had already thrown away his first wife, ripped England away from the Catholic Church, and married the brilliant, captivating Anne Boleyn. The entire kingdom waited, praying for a prince to finally secure the Tudor dynasty. Then, on September 7th, 1533, the child was born. But it wasn't a prince. It was a girl, Elizabeth, a crushing disappointment. And while she was given a grand christening, her birth didn't solve the king's great problem. For the first 2.5 years of her life, Elizabeth was a princess, but her world was fragile. Her mother, Anne Boleyn, couldn't give Henry the son he so desperately craved. At court, Anne's enemies circled, whispering lies of adultery, incest, and treason. In May of 1536, the unthinkable happened. The Queen of England was arrested, tried on fabricated charges, and beheaded. Just days later, Henry's marriage to Anne was declared void. And just like that, their daughter, Elizabeth, was no longer a princess. She was officially declared illegitimate, stripped of her title, and cut out of the line of succession. At just 2 years old, she had lost everything. She was now the broken child of a disgraced queen, a walking, talking reminder of the king's greatest shame. In the viper's nest of the Tudor court, that was the most dangerous thing you could be. The years that followed were a brutal education in how to stay alive. Elizabeth was shuffled between households, a background character in the ongoing royal drama. Her position became even shakier with the birth of her half-brother, Edward, the male heir everyone had prayed for. Now, she was not just illegitimate, but a nobody, with powerful Catholics across Europe refusing to even acknowledge her existence. When Henry VIII died in 1547, the dangers only got worse. The teenage Elizabeth was sent to live with her stepmother, Catherine Parr, and Catherine's new husband, the handsome and wildly ambitious Thomas Seymour. Seymour was the new king's uncle, and he was eaten up by jealousy and a lust for power. He soon began a disturbing and predatory flirtation with the young princess. We have accounts of him coming into her bedroom in his nightgown for romps, tickling her, and engaging in horseplay that was deeply wrong. For a while, her stepmother Catherine even joined in, maybe trying to downplay a situation she felt powerless to stop. But one day, Catherine found Elizabeth in an embrace with Seymour, and the girl was sent away in disgrace. This whole Seymour scandal was Elizabeth's first harsh lesson in how easily a woman's reputation could be destroyed. When Seymour was later arrested and executed for treason, Elizabeth herself was dragged into it. At just 15 years old, she was questioned relentlessly, her loyalty to her own brother put on trial. It was terrifying, but she showed an incredible calm and intelligence, skillfully sidestepping every trap they laid for her. She survived, but the lesson was burned into her memory. Every move you make is being watched, and one single slip-up can be fatal. The death of her brother, King Edward, in 1553 kicked off a crisis that put Elizabeth in more danger than ever before. Her half-sister, Mary, took the throne. Mary was a passionate Catholic, and she was determined to drag England back to the authority of the Pope. For the Protestants of England, Elizabeth, the daughter of Anne Boleyn, the icon of the English Reformation, was their only real hope. This made her a symbol, which also made her a target. Mary's reign was fueled by paranoia and brutal religious persecution, earning her the nickname Bloody Mary. When she decided to marry King Philip II of Spain, it caused widespread panic and anger, sparking fears that England would become a Spanish puppet state. This anger boiled over into Wyatt's rebellion in 1554, a plot to overthrow Mary and put Elizabeth on the throne. Elizabeth insisted she had nothing to do with it, but Mary didn't believe her. On March 18, 1554, Elizabeth was arrested and taken by barge down the River Thames to the one place she feared more than any other, the Tower of London, the very same prison where her mother had waited for her execution. For 2 terrifying months, Elizabeth was locked away, certain that a death sentence was coming. Mary's most ruthless advisors grilled her. In the end, they couldn't find a single piece of hard evidence against her. When the rebel leader, Wyatt, proclaimed her innocence from the scaffold, Mary had no choice but to let her live. But Elizabeth wasn't free. She was released from the tower only to be put under strict house arrest for almost a year. She had been to the edge of death and stared it down. In the quiet of her imprisonment, the prisoner was becoming a queen, learning the patience, caution, and the art of hiding her true thoughts, the very skills that would define her reign. In November 1558, Queen Mary died. Suddenly, the path was clear. At 25 years old, the forgotten daughter, the prisoner, was proclaimed Queen of England. Across London, people went wild. Church bells rang out as crowds celebrated the beginning of a new chapter. But the crown she inherited was a disaster. She was now in charge of a country that was fractured, bankrupt, and teetering on the edge of collapse. England was torn in two by religion. The treasury was empty, and the great powers of Catholic Europe saw her as a fraud and a heretic. Maybe the biggest challenge of all was the simple fact that she was a woman. In the 16th century, women were seen as too weak and too emotional to govern. The men of her court saw her as a piece on a chessboard, someone to be married off and controlled. She proved them all wrong immediately. One of her first moves was to build a council of brilliant, loyal advisors, men like William Cecil, who would stand by her for decades. She took the skepticism about her gender head-on. Years later, she would famously tell her troops that while she had the body of a weak and feeble woman, she had the heart and stomach of a king. She wasn't going to be a pawn in anyone's game. She would rule for herself, answering only to God and to her country. The broken child was gone. A queen was rising. Elizabeth's first mission was to fix the religious divide that was ripping England apart. She famously said she had no desire to make windows into men's souls. Her solution, the Elizabethan religious settlement, was a work of political genius. She created a Protestant Church of England, but kept some of the familiar Catholic traditions. It was a middle way that was designed to prevent a bloody civil war, and for the most part, it worked. This smart, practical approach defined her entire rule. For decades, the biggest question hanging over England was, who will the Queen marry? Marrying a foreign prince might bring an alliance, but it could also mean giving up power. Marrying one of her own subjects, like her favorite Robert Dudley, was full of political danger. So, Elizabeth turned the question into her greatest weapon. She brilliantly played rival suitors against each other for years, using the promise of marriage as a diplomatic tool, all while holding onto her power. By never marrying, she redefined what it meant to be queen, becoming the Virgin Queen, married only to her kingdom. Her reign was still full of danger. Her cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots, was a constant threat, a Catholic with a strong claim to the throne who became the focus of one plot after another. After keeping her imprisoned for nearly 20 years, Elizabeth made the agonizing choice to have her executed. Then came the biggest test of all, the Spanish Armada. In 1588, the most powerful naval fleet in the world was sent by King Philip II of Spain to destroy Protestant England once and for all. Elizabeth gave a now legendary speech to rally her troops, and through a combination of English skill and raging storms, the invincible Armada was defeated. It was a victory that secured England's future and cemented Elizabeth as a titan on the world stage. Her reign sparked an English Renaissance, giving us figures like William Shakespeare, and set the stage for a future global empire. The story of Elizabeth I is one of the most incredible turnarounds in history. She started life as an outcast, disowned by her father and branded illegitimate. She survived a childhood of neglect, a predatory scandal, and a prison cell in the Tower of London. Every stage of her early life was a fight for survival that shaped her into the leader she became. She took on a weak, divided nation and made it strong. She shattered every expectation of what a woman could be, ruling for over 44 years with a sharp mind, incredible cunning, and a fierce love for her people. The broken child became Gloriana, a legend in her own lifetime. Her legacy isn't just the golden age she created, but the powerful truth that real strength isn't something you're born with. It's forged in the fires of adversity. If you found this story of survival and power as incredible as we do, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into history. And let us know in the comments, which historical figure should we break down next? Thanks for watching.